This is In the Name of Football.
Hello and welcome back to the In the Name of Football podcast. We are back with our season 23-24 preview, because I keep saying review. Oh, for fuck's sake, why did I have to just do that?
What?
I just put pre. I just said that. Why did I have to say that?
Well, that's fine. That's fine. That was fine. That's fine. You don't want it. It's fine. That would have been fine to believe in.
All right, okay. Hello and welcome back to the In the Name of Football podcast. Oh, we can't do that. Such a wanker, John. Oh God. Right, this is really bad recording. I don't know why it is so bad. Like you're just
your internet stinks. You're on the fucking Mackey's Wi-Fi, aren't you?
Yeah, no, it's really bad. I don't know what the fuck's going on here. Can you hear that or not? You can hear him talking.
Yep.
Sam? Shall I keep down a bit? Are you ready?
Yes.
Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of the In the Name of Football podcast. We are bringing you our season 23-24 preview show, finally, because we rabbited on about the Arsenal and Manchester United for about nearly 2 hours between them. But the first silverware of the season has been handed out, which will bring me nicely into the co-host Ash, where I think by the looks of the scenes at Wembley at the weekend, they were like Ash mid-December last year, like they'd won the World Cup or something. I don't know. Ash, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Obviously, I'm not gonna revel in the Community Shield victory too much. It's basically a pre-season trophy for me. Doesn't really mean much, we're even like ahead of City in terms of pre-season as it is. So yeah, I'm not going to look too much into it. I think it was a good psychological thing in terms of beating them. I know we didn't technically beat them because it was on penalties, but just that little thing that we have kind of beaten them, if that makes sense. Obviously, again, we haven't really in 90 minutes, but you know what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I mean, again, just sort of a more of a pre-season thing, really. I'm not going to take too much into it. I'm not going to look into that much into it, but yeah, obviously nice to have that sort of psychological thing of getting off to a good start. Not that it really matters anyway, because City have lost their last two Community Shields, so and then I mean, look at them.
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to, it was like really funny. It was like I was in a group chat the other day, and it was like on Sunday actually, and I was just watching the end of it, and I was like, guarantee you, Declan Rice now says that's why I joined Arsenal to win trophies. First thing he says, that's what I envisioned when I joined Arsenal. I was like, oh God's sake, like Jesus Christ. And there's like loads of Arsenal things going around, like Harry Kane, 465 games for Tottenham or whatever, like no trophies. Declan Rice, one game, one trophy. I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. And there's all these Arsenal fans like giving Jose grief ages ago, saying that the Charity Shield is a trophy, but now all of a sudden, because they've won it, it's a trophy and they've got to be proud of it. And I just thought, Jesus Christ. But anyway, we've even given it too much thought on this opener of the episode, to be fair with you. In my brain, do you know what I mean? It hurt my brain. Like Ramsdale even said we'd won the game, and I was like, you didn't beat him. Like it was a penalty shootout. If you had beaten him like 3-0 and it was convincing, and you really put on that's a marker. Do you know what I mean? I think.
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, right. Like I said, we're going to start off with Premier League. It is the Premier League preview show. I can't believe we're this close already. You know, Jesus, where's the time gone? Do you know what I mean?
It's flown by, hasn't it?
Yeah, and literally it all starts this Friday. Obviously, we're recording. This is a Tuesday. We're recording. Hopefully, we'll have this podcast hopefully Wednesday, maybe Thursday. Who knows? Might be good for Thursday for the review coming up. But anyway, the Premier League starts on Friday night. First game of the season is Burnley versus Manchester City. Obviously, Vincent Kompany, welcoming Pep Guardiola, the old teacher versus tutor sort of thing. Is that right? No. Have I got that right? No, I haven't, have I? It's a student versus tutor. That's the one. But, you know, but we'll look at, I don't know if we're going to look at the games in so much, but we'll just look at some of the teams, won't we? And just skip through it and see what we think. But I think, interestingly, I think probably one of the teams who I would like to start off with looking at because of the success of last year, and they've been quite instrumental in the transfer window this season, is Brighton, because I think it'll be very interesting to see if they can repeat the trick again. I don't think it's so much of a trick, but you know they've got a kind of obviously they struck gold with McAllister and they struck gold with Casido, and there are rumours of no Casido still leaving the club. Obviously, we had Joe Sayers on, who from the Brighton Hove Albion Obsessed podcast absolutely worships the ground he walks on, and rightly so. You know, he had a fantastic season last year. There's been a few outgoings from Brighton, a few incomings, some very interesting incomings. So I just thought it was a good place to start. I think again they might have got the mix right, but I don't know if they can continue it. And obviously, with European football coming into a factor. You know, who knows what can happen. We've obviously seen teams in the past have a brilliant season, get into Europe for the first time, and then the domestic season falters for that. But yeah, so obviously looking at the outgoings, obviously the big one so far is McAllister going to Liverpool, and Sanchez has gone to Chelsea, which I think was I think he was left out of the squad from about December, January time anyway, wasn't he? Due to like potentially wanting to leave. Anything you want to like? Yeah.
Jason Steele was becoming the starting keeper towards the end of the season anyway. So that shouldn't impact things too much. You know, they've got 25 million from Chelsea for him. So I think that's a great deal really for Brighton in that sense. Obviously, yeah, I think the big one is McAllister going. I think Joe Sayers himself said that he was doing well sort of in a deeper role, sort of next to Casido, and that's where he's performed best. And the clear replacement for that is Mohamed Dahoud, who is an incredibly experienced player who has played a lot of football for Borussia Dortmund at a good level. Again, it remains to be seen how well he'll adapt and fit into Brighton. But I think the main one for me will be the loss of Levi Colville. You know, he was outstanding there with Lewis Dunk, and they haven't really necessarily brought in a clear replacement. They've brought in a Brazilian, Igor Julio from Fiorentina, but to be honest, I don't know too much about him, and obviously we'll have to wait and see what happens with him. But I think losing a quality of Colville is going to be massive, especially obviously the partnership that him and Dunk had last season. That's going to be the big thing. And as you said, sort of European football, you do often see teams do start to struggle when they are playing in the two competitions for the first time. I think maybe Leicester, when they first did it, they sort of got through it. They did quite well. But apart from that, you do see teams struggle. And, you know, looking at the Brighton team, I wouldn't necessarily say it's that deep in terms of squad depth. You know, they have still got some good players in there. You know, Tariq Lamptey, for example, didn't even play that much last season because he was injured. But then you know, they're still going to have the likes of Matoma, who's going to perform well again. You would have thought. Obviously, Solly Marsh took some big strides last season, and I quite like the James Milner acquisition. I think he adds a good leadership in there, and he's a very, very experienced player, of course. alongside, the likes of Lallana and Pascal Gross. So, they do have quality in there. And the hope is that Facundo Buonanotte will push on as well. I know Joe Sayers, again, he mentioned him, and he was raving about him. Only 18. He made 13 appearances in the league last season. So, again, the hope is there. And they do have a lot of young talent still. Obviously, Evan Ferguson, we saw how promising he looked. He was injured for large parts as well. Julio Enciso, again, very young player who wasn't necessarily playing week in, week out, but he shone. Just think about, I think that was that goal against Manchester City, wasn't it? An absolute banger of a goal. And then I've also signed João Pedro, only 21 from Watford. He scored 11 goals in the Championship last season. So it's a team full of potential with a good mix of experience as well. It's going to be extremely hard for them to sort of replicate what they did, though, because I think the level of competition elsewhere and just purely the signings and the quality of players that are heading to the teams around them, I think it's going to be incredibly difficult. I think probably still a top 10 finish, and I think they'll make a big impact on the sort of races for Europe in terms of taking points off bigger teams. But I'm gonna struggle to see them pushing for the Europa League spots again for next season.
Yeah, I echo your thoughts there. I think obviously some great players in there, but obviously losing Caicedo and McAllister, I think, is the heart of the side in that midfield there. Obviously Matoma,
if Caicedo does go, obviously he's still there.
Yeah. I think he will eventually go, but I'd like to say, like, we have spoken about this off camera, and don't think we've given enough time on the podcast. I think it's very good, and I think it's kudos to Brighton how they've actually dealt with this Caicedo move, because look how Chelsea kind of like bullied Brighton with Colville. They were insistent he wasn't for sale. They wanted to keep him, and so why can't a team like Brighton go, well, no, we want to keep Caicedo, and they've actually stood their ground. It's £100 million plus apparently, and he's not going for any less than that. So hats off to Brighton for that, because
I agree.
I think far too long teams get their own way. Obviously you look at West Ham with Rice, they said 100 million and they stuck to that. And if he does go, hopefully they get that 100 million and they can reinvest that wisely, and they might get a few good players. I was very interested in the guy Dahoud, who they signed from Dortmund as well. I think that's a very good replacement in that midfield area, just in case a Caicedo goes. Obviously, James Milner as well. I think that's a very good acquisition, like you said. I just feel like I'm repeating what you're saying, basically. But again, João Pedro coming in from Watford, very good pedigree, comes in with a very high reputation. Well, he went in with one with Watford, and hopefully he can produce that for Brighton as well. But I just think they might struggle with European football as well, throwing that into the mix. So I think it's top 10 finish, and I think they'll be there or thereabouts in Europe. But I just don't think they can repeat the pie trick again and break into that top 5-6 like they did last season and put the pressure on the big four, or the top four, let's say, because I think big four's gone now, really, isn't it? It's more like a big one. So we did mention them slightly just there. So I think it's probably one of the hardest teams to look at. So we're going to go into it, and we haven't really got a running order. So it's we're kind of throwing it into the mix, and then we're just going to have to kind of like pick it up. But I'd like to have a look at Chelsea. So I think it is a very interesting situation with them this year. They've got a lot of players coming in, a lot of players going out. I think too many people are jumping on it straight away that Chelsea are back, sort of thing. I've seen a lot of rumours, a lot of people saying that Chelsea, Pochettino is going to get his way, etc., and he'll have a real influence on the side. I don't disagree with that, but what I would say is there's a lot to go on in that club to get it back this season. If you look at, I think signing Colwell to a new deal is a very pivotal, and it's good for Chelsea going forward. Kind of like that John Terry mould, if you know what I mean. That probably born and raised sort of like Chelsea sort of player might be good for them to keep him. I think the Robert Sanchez, coming in for Kepa, losing Mendy, I think he probably will be their number one choice as well. very keen to see how Nicholas Jackson gets on, because I think he had a very good spell towards the end of the season last year with Villarreal. And obviously today, the news of Christopher Nkunku is now out until apparently mid-December with a recurrence of his knee injury, or I think it's not as bad as the ACL, but it's certainly, he's done another part of his knee today. So
yeah,
he'll be,
I didn't see that. Yeah, that's pretty
yeah.
huge. He
So
struggled. He struggled like all season with Leipzig, with
yeah.
injuries and stuff. So
Yeah, and obviously because he missed the World Cup, didn't he? He missed the World Cup for an ACL, I believe, or something to do with his knee. I can't quite remember exactly what it was, but obviously I don't really know what's going on with Lukaku. I don't think anyone knows what's going on there. Inter Milan seem to be out of the race now. Juventus seem to be in it, and then Saudi crop up. So it's a little bit. I just think there's a lot going on for it to be settled. I think easily someone could come in and nick a player from Chelsea. I think that's the similar sort of thing throughout the league, really. Gusto coming in again. They bought him mid-season and then loaned him out again. But yeah, he's now coming back in, and Azpilicueta's gone. So I think there's just a lot going on, isn't there?
There's too much.
They've lost a lot of experience. You look at it: Havertz, Mount, Kovacic, Koulibaly, Pulisic, Mendy, Loftus-Cheek, Ampadu, Kante, Azpilicueta, Aubameyang. What?
A lot of those players you said have been, the foundations of the success under Tuchel and that team that won the Champions League. And we saw how terrible it was last season, and I do think that Pochettino will come in and improve things for sure.
Yeah, of course he will. Yeah.
But yeah, there's just way too much going on. They need, again, they're going to need time to gel and get things going. And there's just so much change. You've still got a few players in there, like Thiago Silva's going to be the main guy. Reece James will be important as well if he can stay fit. But there's just too many question marks. Again, you look at the central midfield. Enzo Fernandez, yes, quality player. But outside of that, who else have they got? Again, I think they will only play 2 central midfielders. But outside of that, they've got Conor Gallagher, and then a few of the younger players, Andre Santos, Carney Chukwuemeka, and Leslie Ugachukwu, who they've just signed. But again, these are very, very young players who in themselves will need time to develop, as well as the whole team needs to get on the same page, build that chemistry, build that rapport. I just think there's going to be way too much. And if people are saying that Chelsea are back and they're going to be pushing for top 4, no, there's no chance they're going to be doing that for me. No. I think again, they'll be wanting to get in. The first thing, they finished 12th last year. They want to finish in the top half. And then after that, you're thinking top 8, because there's so many teams, there's so much quality, there's so much competitiveness in the sort of top 10 teams in the Premier League. And I can't see, I really think that they're going to struggle. They have got some good options going forward. I think that Mudryk is a quality player, and I think he will eventually show it. Let's not think of it. Sterling is still a quality player on his day. Madueke, all good players. But, Nicholas Jackson, they've got him, and yes, there's a lot of potential surrounding him, but he only scored 12 goals for Villarreal last season. He scored 12 La Liga goals in his whole career.
It was all towards the end of the season as well. I think he started becoming a bit of a bagsman for Villarreal.
It's like... you're jumping on something straight away, and it's no proven thing. And again, you could say the same thing about Højlund at United. He's had 6 good months at Atalanta and he scored 9 goals. Again, it goes back to the debate where we were saying, do you take that plunge on the player before they've developed and their value's worth even more? Say Højlund had a 20-plus goal season at Atalanta this year. If he'd stayed there, that wasn't going to be 72 million. It probably would have been upwards of 100. So, it's going to be tough, but for me, there's just too many question marks. The job at hand is still huge. And again, I think the relationship at the top, I still don't necessarily think they're above that with Todd and who else is running it. I don't really, judging on what happened last season, they're still signing all these big contracts to players. I don't know. I just think it's still going to be too much for Chelsea for me. I can't see them getting anywhere near the Champions League. But it's the long-term
they're-
project, and I think that's what they're going for, isn't it? They've signed so many young players. They've got rid of older players like Koulibaly and Bakayoko and Kante and Azpilicueta. So that they are looking for the future, which is fair enough. But they're not going to be ready yet this season.
It's a lot of experience as well. Maybe losing one of like Azpilicueta or a Kovacic or a Kante, maybe so. Or maybe you could afford to maybe potentially lose two. And obviously Mason Mount being there for years, he was obviously a big figure for Chelsea. And they've lost a lot of it. Do you know what I mean? A hell of a lot of the old head, the experience in that team. So I think a top 10 finish would be very, very good for Chelsea. I think, considering what's going on, and I think that leads us nicely into a team who I would say kind of underachieved to what they did last year. In the previous seasons, and I think every supporter of Liverpool can say that they did underachieve last season, finishing 5th in the league. Obviously they got the Europa League, but I tell you what, I think the place you start with Liverpool is again the departures and the experience. I was just looking through it now. It's just absolutely crazy. Fabinho, Jordan Henderson, Roberto Firmino. And then you get onto the, James Milner is in there. But then you've got Naby Keita has gone. It's Oxlade-Chamberlain. It's all about that depth, isn't it? So they've lost the experience. They've lost the depth. It's just a bit
again, that's the bulk of the midfield that was their success and where they won the Champions League and where they won the league. Fabinho and Henderson. And okay, there is a time where you perhaps need to move on. I think that necessarily Henderson has not reached the same levels as he once was. But you've still lost the quality of a player of like Fabinho. He's 29 years old. He's sort of in his prime. That is huge. And again, they have brought in McAllister and Szoboszlai. But I don't know. You look at the depth in the midfield, and yes, again, you can say that potentially Trent Alexander-Arnold is going to feature in there, whether he plays as an inverted fullback who then moves into midfield or he starts outright there. But again, it's that depth, and again, as you say, that experience. I don't know. I just think they're going to struggle. I think Bajcetic did well last season. He looked very solid in there, and I think he'll probably play a lot. And again, Harvey Elliott will probably too, Curtis Jones. But again, it's going to be tough. And they're still lacking that sort of holding player like the Fabinho or a Henderson. There's not really. They're all. You haven't got. You're rocking the holding player in the midfield who's going to stabilise the rest of the team.
I think if Liverpool were being linked with a right back, I mean they have got Calvin Ramsey coming back. From loan from Aberdeen, I think he was at last season. So that is potential there. I think they've got a lot of belief in him to come in and sit in that right back position. So potentially that could move Trent Alexander-Arnold to come into that centre midfield role and be that, like you see Gerrard come through, and Henderson obviously took his time to come through, and perhaps Trent could be that man who can come in and replace the Henderson and your Gerrards, etc. And take up that mantle, mate. Potentially, he's a local lad, etc. So, there's the potential there. Yeah, but if you said in midfield, Gerrard wasn't really good at defending as such, was he? You could put a tackle in, but I think
Trent's not that player, is he?
I don't know. He could be. I think you look at do you have to be exactly the same sort of player to play a holding midfield role like Gerrard used to do?
Not necessarily, but you need a caliber of player in there who has the ability to put a tackle in, can shake players off the ball. And Trent isn't that player. Yes, I think, on the ball and his delivery and passing ability is, it's going to be tough to beat, but they're still lacking that sort of solid player in there for me.
Yeah, obviously they are being linked with Romeo Lavia from Southampton.
Yeah,
£50 million. So I don't know if that's a bit of a big, it's a big ask. And I think Gary Neville put an interesting comment out there today. Your best mate. I think it was either today or yesterday. Like a team like Liverpool, they should be in the mix for a Caicedo. Why aren't they doing that?
Money,
that's the sort of player. Yeah, exactly. And I think Neville had a bit of a go at Carragher, saying like, "Oh, so are you saying that your owners aren't fit?" sort of thing. And Jurgen Klopp's kind of like been protecting the owners. I think that might have been a slight dig at like Neville going on about the Glazers all the time, and Carragher saying that it can't all be aimed at the owners, sort of thing. But yeah, bit tongue in cheek there from Neville to Carragher. But yeah, it's an interesting one for Liverpool because I think without the Henderson and Fabinho transfers, then departures, the two additions were great, and even if they added Lavia into that, because that was still being mentioned before them two departures, like that would have given Liverpool. I was kind of like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like Liverpool are coming back into this, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? But yeah, obviously now I think with them two big departures, I think that is a massive loss for Liverpool. Yeah, I'm not. It's still hard to place them as well.
Yeah,
because you could easily see Klopp turning a negative into such a positive because he is good at like that. We can't deny that he does get the best out of his sides. Like someone like a Curtis Jones, that could be his time to shine. He's not afraid of putting a tackle in. He could come in and do it.
same with Harvey Elliott.
Yeah, so you don't know. I think Harvey Elliott's more of a creative player, but yeah, I certainly believe that there's potential there. But then when you look at it, you're looking at Stamford Bridge come the opening day weekend of the season, you could potentially have two teams with probably about 11 debuts between both sides, which would be crazy. Liverpool could potentially field 3 midfielders having their debuts, like Szoboszlai, Lavia, if they get signed in time, which I highly doubt it, but with McAllister. So yeah, that
you could see Liverpool going just all out attack at this point, and just like let's not forget they had a lot of their players going forward weren't available. Jota was out injured for large parts. Luis Diaz was out injured for large parts. Gakpo only arrived in January. It was only Darwin Núñez's first season. I think he developed quite nicely over the season. I think he's set for a good year. So maybe they're just going to go all gung-ho and just say, right, we're going to go direct football like we did before, and just get it forward to the front line. We don't care how many we let in. We'll just go for it, sort of thing. And obviously, the attacking ability in the team, is still there, as I just said, and in the midfield as well. If you think about the passing ability, the transitions is what you can get because Trent can just play those long balls. Thiago's got the vision. Szoboszlai is very good. He's a very well balanced player, but he, predominantly you're going to be expecting him to making those runs, driving through the midfield and help and support the attack, whilst perhaps a McAllister might sit a little bit deeper, but he still has the ability to keep those balls ticking over. So I could see them sort of going back to how they were before and hitting quickly on the transition. And you look at the front forward players who I just said, and that's quite scary, isn't it? So yeah, and I think Konate again is developing quite nicely. We know how good Van Dijk is, albeit I don't think he's been as good as he was after that injury, but he's still obviously a top quality centre back. And then Konate is every time I see him play, he looks to be getting better. So there's a lot of potential in there. Again, it's just that midfield worry, isn't it? A couple of injuries in that midfield, and they're going to struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It is really hard to place Liverpool this season. It's definitely a big transition period. I don't want to repeat it, but without the two losses and of Fabinho and Henderson, and with them two additions, I could easily see them being well and truly back. But I also kind of think I kind of believe what you're saying in the sense of that we could have another Newcastle United under Kevin Keegan situation where it's like, we'll win 5-4. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's so tough.
See that happening.
Especially of the top 8, top 10, because it's so competitive. I think again it's going to be an exciting season, and it's going to be even more competitive. So I mean, let's finish up with Liverpool then. I know again it's going to be incredibly difficult, but let's make a prediction for where they'll finish. I'm going to say they're going to finish 5th.
5th, yeah. I'm kind of gone round about 5th or 6th. I think round about that sort of. I think there's too many teams settled and just making good additions to knock them out of the top 4-5. So I think, I'll look at Liverpool around about 5th, 6th, because I still think outside that top 4 from last season, I think there's a lot of teams who are still in transition come the end of, coming towards the beginning of the season, and I think that potentially the top 4 from last season are very well settled and know exactly where they are.
For me,
so
the top 3 is
having
set.
someone break. Yeah, top 3, 4. I think you're looking at the top 4 potentially is very much where it should be for me, but I'm sure we'll get onto that further on. But I'm thinking 5th or 6th, it sounds about right for Liverpool. But we're then talking about it. Kevin Keegan, Newcastle United. So obviously, we led into the top 4 from last season. So let's look at them. Why not? Newcastle United, I think, again, they've gone about their business very sharply. I think they've done some really good business, not least in Sandro Tonali, one of our favourites from Football Manager. We'll just run through the quick addition. Sandro Tonali coming in from AC Milan for 64 million, 65 million, something like that. Record for an Italian player. Harvey Barnes is coming in from Leicester, relegated Leicester. Obviously, I think it's about 35, 40 million in the end for him. And Tino Livramento, who I think is an absolute baller. I thought he was really, really good for Southampton when he was fit. So there's 3 really, really good players there who I think they've done well to add to the squad from last season. Saint Maximum leave, and I think he didn't really feature on Eddie Howe a lot. So I think, that wasn't exactly. I don't know how to say it. I don't think it's so much of a loss. I think it's more of a question mark hanging over that one of who bought them and who owns the teams who bought them, etc.
Yeah. The Saint Maximin one, I mean, he scored 1 Premier League goal last season, as you quite rightly said. I don't think he was featuring too heavily. And I think Harvey Barnes is a brilliant signing. 13 league goals last season. He's top quality. Playing in a better team. Again, I think he'll really, really shine. And again, I think they've done well. I think Newcastle are going about it in a good way in terms of they're not overspending. They're not, it's so very, very easy to just go out and buy 8 or 9 new players, and they've sort of done it incrementally. And yes, okay, the team is a lot different from where it was before the takeover, but they have sort of done it, 3 or 4 players here over each window. And that way you can allow the team to gel, and you allow the players to sort of build naturally. And again, I'll sort of echo what you said. I think Livramento, again, is a quality signing. Again, Sandro Tonali, we all like him. I've watched quite a lot of him for Milan. And, again, he uses class. I think, again, there's not going to be any sort of issue with him settling into the Premier League because he's a workhorse. He's got engine. He's got fight. He's got character about him. The only one thing, it doesn't seem that he's too happy about leaving Milan. So maybe his heart's not quite in it. I don't know. It's people always sort of make the most out of these images. Oh, it doesn't seem that he's even smiling. He's probably fine. But you know what I'm trying to say? Like, who knows? His heart might not actually be in it.
I have seen this. I have seen it. But then someone was like, hang on a minute. Have you seen his face when he won the league with the team he supported as a child? AC Milan. He's like, with the trophy.
Just how he is.
He's probably just how he is. Like deep down, he probably hates his job. I think he was the player. It's Sergio Aurier from Spurs who say, "Yeah, I hate football. I'm just good at it, so I do it."
Asu Akoto. Can you remember him?
Yes, that's the one.
Was it. He was the main one.
Yeah, but I think he might be like that. He's just probably very hard to please because obviously the things as well where his missus, his girlfriend or his wife walks into the training ground and is like, oh my god, look at this. You know what I mean? Like she's wowed by it. So yeah, I do know what you mean. I've seen a lot of that going around on social media and stuff. But there's no doubt about his ability on the ball. I think he's a fantastic footballer. I don't think, again, like yourself, I don't think he'll have any problems fitting into the game. And like we just said, when we were covering the Liverpool part of it, I think this is why I don't think that top 4 is going to be unmoved from last season, because I think the teams in that top 4 last season have been very good at doing what they do. You look at the teams who we look at potentially coming into that and had bad seasons, like your Liverpools, like your Chelseas, like your Spurs. particularly the Spurs situation, what's going on around Harry Kane, I don't think they're going to have enough to get back into that top four, to break into it. Newcastle looking very solid. They've potentially
They
got rid of
are.
a problem into Maximum. I think he might have been a problem for them. I think that is something they were trying to get rid of fairly quickly, which they've managed to do. So I think the only situation with Newcastle is, again, that whole Champions League thing, adding that into your season. I think they've added they've added quality into that team. Yeah, do you know someone who I thought would actually do well at Newcastle? And I was having a conversation with someone at work today about this, because you look at the way Newcastle played last season. Harry Maguire. Now, I'm not saying you. I've said before how Harry Maguire would be very good at just sitting on the edge of the 18-yard box, heading balls out. Now, you look at Newcastle last year. Yes, they took the game to teams, but they didn't play high up the pitch, did they? Fast attacking football. They played defensive football and hit you on the counter attack.
Now, I would agree with that for the first 6 months of the season, but I think later on they changed quite significantly, and Eddie Howe developed the team. They developed into that. Yes, they were very, very defensive before the World Cup. They were extremely defensive. They sat back and they were rock solid. And yes, I'd agree with that. But I think the way in which they're progressing now, and sort of how they were playing towards the end of last season, I don't necessarily think that's how they're going to play for heading into this season. I think Eddie Howe has always been a manager who wants to play football, get down, play short passes. And I think that's sort of always been the goal in where they're heading. And I think that will be amplified even more for this season. But yeah, just going back to like the top four, and I think the top three are set. I think, City, Arsenal and United. And as I said, the only reason why I think that fourth one is Newcastle, as you said it as well, is Champions League. Playing in that Europe, they haven't played in Europe for when were they the last time they would have played in Europe? So so that would have been, that's going to be a challenge, and there's going to be these big Champions League nights for Newcastle, which the fans are going to love, and they're going to be putting all their energy into that, you would have thought, and perhaps that would take some of the focus off the league. But yeah, that's the only thing for me, and I think that's where you could potentially see a Liverpool creep in. But apart from that, that it is sort of, they are the front runners, as you'd say, because as you said, the squad looks quality. They're developing really nicely. So yeah, but again, they're doing it quite well, and I think that, if they don't get that top four, they'll definitely be in the top six.
Yeah. No, I've certainly got them in the top four position again for next season, because I think like we've just covered, I think the teams around it, the teams who are there, they're just adding to it. And I think, again, there's too much going on for the teams around them to upset that, to be honest with you. Apart from one team who, we did obviously cover United and Arsenal, so we're not going to go into them in too much detail. We'll just round it off with them. But the team who I do think could potentially be the biggest shock for the top four this season, and yes, they've still got the surrounds with European football as well, but I think they've got a very experienced manager in European football, and I think it's Aston Villa. If they can carry on their experience, their form from last season, Unai Emery is a very, very good manager. I think the Arsenal job was just that. It reminded me of like the whole David Moyes at Manchester United situation, where you had like probably the right manager at the wrong time, and like Jose should have gone straight in after Fergie. I think it was just the wrong time for Emery. Do you know what I mean? I think he could have developed something there at Arsenal eventually, and it's just that they just weren't prepared to change at that time. But I think now he's at Villa, I think he's got a very, very good side, very, very good signings in Yuri Tillmans, Pau Torres, and Moussa Diaby. I think there's some three really great additions there. Tillmans, kind of lost his way at Leicester last year, but this is always the risk when you have a player in the last year of your contract. You're not going to get the best of them, and obviously that certainly showed with Tillmans.
And we know it's quality as well.
Yeah, and obviously there's talk of Pau Torres going to Manchester United or a Man City, and there's other teams mentioned in there, and that was the release clause of like 70 million, I think, but they've managed to get him in for about 30 million. And obviously Moussa Diaby, who had a choice to go to Saudi Arabia, and thank God he chose to come to the Premier League. Not because he chose to come to the Premier League, I just think it's, if you're seeing players like Moussa Diaby go at such a young age to Saudi Arabia, then potentially that league can then take off. And do you know what I mean? I don't think that would have been a good thing for them. One, probably a bit of experience. They've lost Aaron Ashley Young, knew Aston Villa very well. But I think it's not so much of a in quality. I don't think it's a loss. I think it's more of the experience in the loss there.
Yeah, that shouldn't make too much an impact.
No, it shouldn't make too much of an impact, but the experience side of it, But I think that is one of the things that like Ollie Watkins had a very good run in last season. If they can manage to keep Buendia coming in, he started to play really well last season as well. Obviously, John McGinn found his form as well. There's some very, very good players at Villa. And, I think even Bailey started to play. Leon Bailey started to play really well for him towards the end of last season as well. So there's some they've still got Martinez, they've still got Tyrone Mings there. There's some very, very good players. And I think I could easily see them fitting into that top four, easily disrupting it or being there or thereabouts.
Yeah,
that top six.
I can't agree more.
Yeah.
They're going to be the main. They're going to be the main ones, really. I think to sort of challenge into that. I think with Liverpool, I think the sort of top six as we sort of said, City, Arsenal, United, Newcastle, Liverpool, Villa. I think for me that's going to be very, very hard to break out of. Because as you just said, there's so much quality in there. There's so much quality, and another guy who I was so very surprised at how his impact going forward was Douglas Luiz. He had 12 goal contributions to the Premier League last season, and I didn't realise that. I knew how well he was doing, and I thought perhaps he's just a bit more sitting player, keep that ticking over. I didn't realise he contributed that much. So again, there's quality all round. Everyone's sort of chipping in. We haven't even mentioned Jacob Ramsey as of yet, who he did quite well last season as well. I think Moussa Diaby is a quality signing. Ollie Watkins has sort of proven his trade in the Premier League now consistently over the past few years, and I think he'll shine again. And there's just so much talent in there. There really is. And again, I couldn't agree more about Unai Emery. I think I think he finished. I think we were fifth at the time, or we were sort of around in and around that. And all things considering of where we then went to after with Arteta finishing 8th, 9th, he didn't really do a bad job, did he? He didn't at all. And he's proven how good he can be at Villa. I think again they're the sort of the main ones, and I think they're going to have an excellent year again next season.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you look at the teams like we've just mentioned, as in the Spurs, Liverpool, Chelsea, and then you look at Villa, they're kind of like that top four where they haven't really lost us a lot, and they've added some really, really good players to that depth and that quality and depth. So I think
they haven't lost anyone really.
No, like I said, I think the only real one is Ashley Young with a bit of experience. Yeah. So exactly.
They'll be fine, and they've just added that quality in there, and they're going to be definitely ones to look out for. I'd be worried about Villa.
Yeah, that is my outside tip for that top four. One team who could potentially upset it, but I do think the top four is settled for me. I'm quite willing to stick my neck on the line if you want to go and have a look at the top team in the league at the minute, the top team in the country, the top team in the world. For me, which I hate to say, and hopefully them 115 charges aren't very far away from getting found out, and then we can all breathe, and the Premier League can be back to normal eventually. But Manchester City, what can you say? Again, people sitting there going, "Oh, they've lost Gundogan." Well, I'll tell you what. If you've got any doubts about Kovacic going there, well, you don't know football very well, because I think it's a very, very good replacement. Very good with the ball, moves very well with the ball, very good at passing. He's been in the Chelsea team, which has been unsettled with managers. I think it's a great addition. Really, I saw him linked with Manchester United before that, and I thought, brilliant. that is a great signing. And then he goes to Chelsea. I was disappointed at that, really, because I think just when you think they're losing a top quality player, they go and get him. And I think for £30 million could look like a bit of a snip. And I think once he gets it,
there's a reason why he's performed so well for Croatia as well. You know, part of that golden generation that gets so far at the World Cups and stuff like that, and he's down to it. You know, him in there with Modric and Brozovic. You know, it's one of the best midfield threes you'll find. So yeah, no, I completely agree with that. He's certainly shouldn't make a lot of impact as well. And let's not forget they're now about to go and sign Josko Vardiol as well, who's one of the best young defenders in the world. They have signed him now. There we go. Then you know they officially got him now. Already adding to, you know, we saw how good Akanji was last season. Ruben Diaz. Look at
it. They've now got three. They kind of, the way they played last season, they switched it to like three centre backs, didn't they? Playing the left-sided centre back as the left full back as a centre back, didn't they? And the right back was a bit strange. It was really strange how they played towards the end of the last season. But now, if they're going to continue playing that like this season, you've got Akanji, Stones, Laporte, Diaz, Gardeval, and there's another one, and I can't remember who it is now. But there's like six. They now have six centre backs. Top class. It's Nathan Ake. So they've now got six.
You can even say Walker in there as well. Like he can sort of play on that sort of right.
They had Rico Lewis as well, didn't he? Come in. So they had Rico Lewis and Walker, and also they've still got Joao Cancelo as well. So it's just like, what on earth? It's just ridiculous.
It's stupid, and it doesn't even matter that they'll have Mahrez either, because I mean, I think Phil Foden will probably have another big year. I mean, he's already. It's weird because it doesn't feel like he hardly plays, but then he's still got 16 goal contributions last season, and I think again he's just going to become even more and more influential. You know, you've got Grealish, Silva, and then the next one is Foden now, and then they're going to be bringing in Cole Palmer probably, and or maybe James McAtee, and you know, Cole Palmer. I mean, we saw the goal that he just banged in against Arsenal. You know, there's every chance that he comes in and performs to a top level. So yeah, I mean, City again. There's not going to be any doubt in my mind that they're going to be, you know, ridiculous. But Arsenal will just be that little bit better.
We have done an Arsenal special. We have done a Manchester United special because we support these teams. So, you know, we could do the whole podcast. Well, I'm going to tell you now, it's roughly about 40 minutes in. That's how long the Manchester United episode took. And that's roughly how long the Arsenal episode took. So, you know, we were probably right in justifying in adding them as extra specials, to be fair with you. But with Arsenal, we're not going to go too much into it. But, you know, some really good signings there. You know, Adam Rice, Havertz, Jeremy Timber, and today they've obviously confirmed, well, it's not confirmed officially via the Arsenal website, but David Raya, £30 million is coming in now for British Airways. David Ornstein, it's all out there now, £30 million for them. So I think, you know, just covering that quickly, you know, I think they'll be very lucky. I think not very lucky. I think it's just additions into that squad and additions to Champions League. I think top four again would be great for Arsenal. That's my personal opinion, because I think they're probably ahead of where they should have been last season. So I think finishing the top four would still be a great achievement for Arsenal. To be in that top four, I think it's just where they all finish, because I think top, there is no doubt in my mind.
The top four is minimum now, though. Like, we have to be getting that. Like if we didn't finish in the top four, that's when I'd be like, right, there's some concerns here. But if we don't like challenge for the title, I'll be disappointed. But you know, I'll be realistic. Where you know there's going to be some mugs who are going to be already. I mean, they're already saying Arteta needs to go. But yeah, I wouldn't be. If the only way that would even question that thought would come into my mind is if we didn't get the top four, and if we didn't get that, then I'd be extremely surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, to me, there's only one team who's going to win the league. I think it'll be City. I just think the teams around them, is like where they finish, where Manchester United finish, where Newcastle finish, when Arsenal finish. I don't think that top four is going to be renewed. I think the only team who are going to challenge that is Aston Villa. Realistically, Liverpool as well, potentially. Out of all the teams who are still rebuilding, I think they're probably the closest team to do it, because I think there's just too much to go on at Chelsea. And I think Spurs are ultimately going to lose Harry Kane one way or another, because I think if they don't lose him to Bayern Munich, they'll lose him as a player. Because I don't think he's going to be, as much as he can sit there and say, I'm going to give it my all. Look at Tielemans, look at Pogba, look at Ronaldo, look at all these players who have gone into the final years of their contract and just dwindled. No, I can't ever think of a player who's put 110% in on his last year. Never.
I think it will be slightly different with Harry Kane just because of who he is. I think he is very much sort of, he still loves Tottenham at the end of the day. I think either way, he's still going to be, giving it his all.
Yeah, but
maybe that subconscious thing, though, what you're saying, like his heart isn't quite in it.
If he gets taught, if he gets spoken to, let's not forget, if he doesn't sign a new contract, okay, right. Before we go into this, for me, Man City champions. We'll leave that there. Right? We'll move on for Man City because we've obviously discussed what they are. They are what they are, and I think we'll just gloss over Arsenal as well. You think they'll win the league? I think they'll finish in the top four. We're not going to go into too much into them either. But looking at Spurs, let's do that, because why not? We're talking about Harry Kane now. I think what you've got is a situation there is that you're getting into January time, and teams like PSG, Bayern Munich, who are sniffing around in now, and if you're thinking that Manchester United or a Chelsea or a Newcastle or potentially a Man City, because why the hell not when they want Haaland and Kane, do you know what I mean? They'll all be talking to him as well. I know legitimately he can't talk to another English side until the end of the season, but they will be talking to him come January time, maybe even now. So I think, subconsciously he'll be sitting in his head, well, I've got a potential move here of like 500k a week in my back pocket. I don't really want to go and get injured, do I? Because that's going to be in a contract that, so that happens. Footballers stop giving it all. And I think that's the biggest problem they've got. I think they lose Harry Kane one way or another, either subconsciously in Harry Kane's mind, or they lose him to Bayern Munich. So I think it's going to be a massive problem. And I think Tottenham Hotspurs have kind of shot themselves in the foot there, because they should have either A, got rid of him last season after he had a brilliant Euros, or they should have got rid of him right at the very beginning of this transfer window, made it publicly known he is for sale. They should have took like 85 million. Asking for £100 million plus for a player in the last year of his contract is ridiculous. If you think Harry Kane's worth that much, Daniel Levy, then you should have done it a lot sooner than now. I think if they had to put him up for sale last season for about 120 million, they probably would have got it. Seems like Manchester United would have been biting his hands off for him. Do you know what I mean? So it's a bit of a stupid move to leave it this late for a decision to be made there.
I think again that the main one for me as well, that even with Harry Kane last season and how well he played and the goals they got, they finished 8th. So, for me, I know there was all that shit with Conte, etc. But it's going to be a big job for Postecoglou. He's come from Celtic. It's going to be a completely different thing for him. And again, I like the James Maddison sign, and I think he'll add that sort of creativity. It's what they need, but again, they're not good enough. They're not good enough. The defense isn't good enough. They got absolutely tore apart away at Newcastle, wasn't it? And the defense was all over the place, and they've not really done anything to go about and do that. Destiny Udogie is going to be coming in, who's going to be important on the left hand side, and obviously Pedro Porro as well. But there's just the heart of it, the centre backs. That's where
they've got. They have signed that Mickey van der Veen today, haven't they? For 40 million from Wolfsburg.
And I don't know a lot about him, and he might end up being a good player, but to me, there's still not enough quality in there, is there? There's not enough for me, that's going to really be able to push that top 6. For me, I think they're going to be finishing top half. I'm going to be very surprised if they get top 6. I'm going to be even more surprised if they were challenging for the top 4.
Really? Yeah, no, top 4's out of the question for me.
And again, the main issue again is literally what Conte was saying. It's just the structure at the club, the people above it. It's just not that Levy runs it sort of as a business to make profits, etc. And I don't think they're gonna be able to get success. I can't see it happening. Again, Son started firing a bit towards the end of last season. He could get going. It could flow nicely with the likes of Maddison in there, but there's just not enough quality throughout that side. You look at how the elite, your sort of players that are now at your top 4 clubs that we're now saying, they don't have that. They don't have a central midfielder, for example, who's sort of anywhere near, your likes of Rice or Tonali or like Casemiro, Fernandes, Kovacic, De Bruyne. They haven't got those players. You can say about Bentancur, he was injured last season, and he's a quality player, but they're not good enough. There's not enough quality there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Obviously, they've made Kulusevski's move from Juventus permanent now. They've obviously replaced Hugo Lloris with Vicario from Empoli, who had a very good season. You said that you've watched him. You watched him quite a bit in Italian football last season. That's a good signing as well, by the looks of things. And they might have. I don't know if they've already replaced Harry Kane, but if they're looking at a 19-year-old to come in from South America and hitting the ground running, then I don't know about that one to replace Harry Kane. And a bit of one which England under 19 captain Ashley Phillips coming in from Blackburn, very instrumental for the under 19s winning the England under 19s winning the World Cup stuff. So he's had a very good development through the England youth ranks. So that could be a bit of that's a bit of a shocking one for me. Like £2 million for like £2 million, which has been, it's a isn't it? It's a nominal fee. What do they call them? Tribunal fee sort of things, where it's been dictated by the Premier League. I think £2 million is a bit stupid. Like, for a player who's had a lot of progression through the youth ranks at Blackburn to then be stolen, so to speak, from by Spurs. It's a bit stupid. I don't know too much about him, but certainly
he only made 8 appearances in the Championship last season, so he's not played a lot of football. But it's more about the compensation. I know he's not going to come in and play straight away from or nothing like that. I'm not predicting that, but it's just that kind of like, they've kind of stolen from Blackburn. I think that's something which is a bit like, how can you only say that's worth £2 million? Like, it's a bit of a strange one for me, especially in this day and age when you're talking about players like Scott McTominay being linked with 35, £40 million moves. But look, for me, I agree with you, Spurs. I think there's just not enough there, and I think, like we've just touched upon, I think Spurs lose Harry Kane one way or another this season. I don't think they're going to have Harry Kane but completely on board. James Maddison, great signing. I think that is, if they now tied down Harry Kane to a nice 3-4 year contract, and they had Maddison and Son and Kulusevski, you could see something potentially happening there and having a nice settled side. But I don't think this Kane thing is done and dusted by a long shot. That's my personal opinion on that one. We would say we gloss over him, so we'll finish with him just on the title side of it. I think Manchester United, again, three or four very good signings there. I think there's still plenty more to be done there. Lots of great departures now, more rather than incomings, obviously. The talks of McTominay, Maguire, Donny van der Beek, Bailly, all going. I mean, every time I think about Manchester United's team, I always forget about Donny van der Beek. Do you know what I mean? Like, Fred's still to go. I think I worked that out last night. United could end up getting like £150 million plus in through the door, and you're like, wow, like that's incredible. And we could talked about having £100 million to spend, and we could end up on a net spend of zero, or like actually making money for it in a transfer window for a first time in years. But for me, again, still, I think I've got Manchester United down as second. My top 4 is actually how I predicted it. I might as well talk about that now. Yeah, I've gone from Manchester United to Man City. Yeah, I've gone from. I don't think they'll be anywhere like contenders as such, because I think Man City will just run away with it. I think United will finish second, probably about 20 points behind.
I think Newcastle will finish third, and I think Arsenal will finish fourth. That's
What are
I've
you
got.
on? What are you smoking right now?
Well, you were saying the other night how Manchester United are quite scary. Like it's quite
Yeah,
scary
they
how
are,
well they're
but
doing.
we're further in the project. We're further in the project, 100%.
Anyway, look, we're not going to go too much into Man United and Arsenal, but that is where I've got it. What's your top four? Have you got a top four prediction? Oh, I
Well,
could probably guess your top four. Can I have a guess at your top four?
go on then.
Arsenal, City, United, Newcastle. That's what I think you're going to
I'll
go.
say the
You
top
might swap
three.
Newcastle.
I'll say the top three. Yeah, I'm still a little bit undecided on that last spot, but yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
probably would have to go Newcastle.
yeah, exactly. I know I can read you like a book, especially as you have predicted Arsenal to win the league. We don't want to make this podcast 2-3 hours long because it could quite easily be. So I think we're just going to kind of look at roughly the main contenders for that relegation, if we can quickly. Not
Yeah.
quickly because we do want to give them the time of day as well because why not, right? I think. I think one of the biggest shocks, I mean, if you haven't really paid a lot of attention to it, and I think this is where we're going to start off with, because I think your obvious ones are in there in Luton and Sheffield United, because I just don't think they've done enough. Luton, I'm really sorry. I think it's great that they're there. I think they've played some lovely football in that league. They really deserve to do what they've done. But I just think it's a big ask for a club of that size.
Yeah.
You know, Bournemouth's a different ball game because Bournemouth had a lot of money and a lot of backings throughout the year. But I think you're now talking about a success story, which I think if they come up and survived, would be that would be one hell of a story for me. Sheffield United just haven't done enough, and there's enough. There's now rumours like Sander Berg leaving, which I think is
Going
a
to
very good player
Burnley.
for Sheffield United. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like
So
actually just as you mentioned Sheffield United, I did see something earlier, and again, yeah, I think they are going to struggle. But Daniel Story, he's a journalist. He tweeted Sheffield United's top 5 chance creators from last season. Oliver Norwood, he's still there, and from his time in the Premier League last season, I watched him quite a bit. Very good player, but the rest of that, Ilman Ndiaye, Sander Berge, James McAtee, and Tommy Doyle, all of those are not going to be at the club for next season. So that's going to be huge. And, I guess, yeah, obviously, as you just said, again, the big one about Sander Berge, if he's leaving, especially to a potential relegation rival in Burnley, yeah, I can't see them staying up.
yeah, so like you said, I think Luton haven't done enough. I think the only real thing they've done of note is to sign Tahi Chong, old Manchester United player from Birmingham. Apart from that, I don't think there's been a lot of movement in Luton's transfers. And again, like I just said, for them to come in and make any sort of impression, they might get an odd couple of good wins. Like they'll probably beat United or one of the big guns at home. You can easily see that because that always happens every year. A team like that gets a good result. So that wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. But the team that I wanted to focus on down there, which I think has gone really under the radar, but is in the news tonight because they've just let Lopetegui has left. So yeah, I did see rumours of this happening yesterday, and potentially Gary O'Neill coming in, who we actually give a lot of credit to on the podcast last year for his performances at Bournemouth. But Wolves, what an absolute shit show that could be. And for me, one to watch out for. They've got a lot of issues regarding their financial fair play, backing and financials within the club, etc. So again, like we said about Liverpool, the main concern in here is the departures. Now, if you were to say that this was to leave a team like Wolves, it's absolutely shocking. So you have, let me just get to the bottom of this list because it is a big one. They obviously lost Matheus Cunha. Matheus Cunha has gone back to Atletico Madrid. João Moutinho gone. Diego Costa gone.
No. Matheus Cunha is at Wolves.
Cunha's gone back, has he?
So he went on originally on a loan. He originally went on a loan, and then they've signed him for
They signed him, I didn't actually
about 50 odd million.
Didn't actually.
Yeah, so he joined Wolves on loan, and then the move's now been permanent.
Okay, but still, if we were to go through that list, so João Moutinho's gone, Diego Costa's obviously left the club, Adama Traore's gone. You've had where are we? Raul Jimenez has gone, Connor Cody has gone, Nathan Collins has gone, Ruben Neves has gone, and then you start looking at who's actually came in. Matt Doherty, Boubacar Traore. And like you say, Matthias Cunha has come in, but that wasn't really a success last year, was it? It wasn't.
He scored two goals in the league, and they paid like 40-50 million for him. Like, yeah,
yeah, it's not good.
With Lopetegui now going as well, who was doing, he was doing well with them last season. They were struggling again. I think it was at the beginning of last year, before he came in. They were sitting. They're in the bottom three up until halfway through the season. Then sort of Lopetegui came in and he sort of turned things around. He's now gone, as you just said. Yeah, Wolves are going to really, really struggle.
They're my three to go down. I'll say that right now. I don't know in the order because I think Wolves have the potential to be absolutely diabolical. So Wolves, Luton and Sheffield United, for me, I just don't think they've done enough. I think Everton love a bit of relegation flirtation, don't they? And they haven't done enough again. Losing one of their, I don't know if that deal's actually gone through, so I'll double check that one, or you can do that while I ramble on. But Damari Gray there was potential for him to go to Fulham, so I think that could be. I think the last I heard on that one was that they weren't going to let him go until they found a replacement for him. But yeah, so obviously,
well, I mean, Everton have been flirting with relegation now for a long time, and they haven't really added much quality. I mean, they've ended up getting Ashley Young, and they've signed Youssef Chermiti, young forward from Sporting. Under Sean Dyche now, he's there. I think they do enough, and I think purely because of the fact, as you just said, those three teams, Luton, Sheffield United, and Wolves, just because they're going to be so poor, I would have thought that's probably their saving grace for Everton. If there was more quality in the league. For me, they're going down. I think obviously Sean Dyche being there for a full season will help things, and he'll bring that stability again. And if Dominic Calvert-Lewin can stay fit, there's every chance that they sort of move quite far away from that and could potentially surprise a few and push back towards mid-table. But yeah, they're not sort of too hot on the agenda. And again, yeah, as I said, if they're big potential for them if there wasn't less quality in the league.
Yeah,
I think West Ham as well. I don't know. I think they're in potential danger because they've literally not bought anybody.
No, but I think that I did actually think about this earlier regarding West Ham. I think there's a lot going on there. They've now got Edson Alvarez is coming in from Ajax, a 35-40 million pound deal there. Looks like it's going to be done I don't know if it'll be done by the weekend. Obviously, they're being linked with Harry Maguire and Scott McTominay. And again, in the right teams, Scott McTominay would be absolutely brilliant. I think too many people say that, oh, he's not good enough for Man United, we should be accepting 30 million. Really? For me, I think 30 million for Scott McTominay is quite poor. I think if you put him into a team where, like a West Ham, a mid-table team, something like that, I think it'd be very good, outside that top 4, top 6. I think you're looking at a solid player, and obviously we talked about Harry Maguire, earlier on. And I think, again, in a team like West Ham, why not? There's a lot of potential there for West Ham. Again, I think another thing with them is they didn't have too much.
If they do bring in these players, or they haven't done yet, and then they need to settle, like the season's starting this week, and they still haven't brought anyone in, they're still going to have to make up. They didn't do that well in the league last season, and now they've just lost their most influential player. I think, again, that maybe by January comes around, they'll turn it around. But I don't know. I think West Ham, there's potential danger there, and
yeah. Oh yeah. I think they've just got enough in the bank, and I mean money-wise, because they've obviously got 105 million they haven't spent from Rice yet. They've sold Vlahovic for round about 20 million. They've also sold Schumacher as well for like 28 million. So they've roughly got about 160 million plus to spend. On the outside, obviously there might be financial fair play involved in that, because they did spend 180 million the season before that. So potentially they might have to look at that and weigh it up. But they've been linked with Ward-Prowse, they've been linked with McTominay, they've been linked with Maguire, and these aren't just links; these are actually purposeful bids going in for them. So it's not like they're not trying to do something about it. So I think there is enough there. And if these players weren't Premier League experienced, then I'd be more concerned. If they did manage to land a Harry Maguire and a McTominay and a Ward-Prowse, then I don't think they've got nothing to worry about.
Yeah, if they get that done, and they'll be fine. Even if they might have a bit of a poor start to the season.
I think it's more of a case of that they will get it done. I just think it's a case of when, to be honest with you, because I think Manchester United ultimately do want to let go of them two players. I just think it's got to be for the right player, the right price. And why should it be? Because for a long time, Manchester United don't make money on transfers. For once, though, we did give them a lot of praise last year. Steve Cooper at Forest. Last season they signed 155 players did they sign roughly? I don't know, something like that, wasn't it? But this season they've only signed 3 real players. Obviously one of them is just confirmation of a loan, which was Chris Wood. Anthony Elanga, who moving from Manchester United. I never really saw the fuss with Anthony Elanga. Too many people jumped on that because he scored a couple of goals and they were like, oh, next best thing, and I'm like, chill out, lads. Do you know what I mean? Like he'll eventually find his level. And is it Anina coming in from Torino on a free transfer? But apart from that, if you add it into what they done towards the end of last season, the guy who's a striker they had, Adioni, yeah, coming in, he started to hit form towards last season and potentially a more settled side this season. So I don't think they'll be. I think they'll be down there, but I think they'll be down there, but they're just like an Everton. And I think the rest of the Premier League are just so lucky this year that we've got 3 teams who, for me, are absolutely perished before they even start the season. It's a nailed on. Them 3 for me, I can't see it going past.
There's obviously potential that they surprise, like when Sheffield United first came back into the league under Chris Wilder. They did surprise then. It's going to be incredibly hard for a team like that to happen. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, looking at Forest, I think they'll be fine. I think, as you said, they'll have a more settled team. A lot of their players, new players who they've brought in, will they'll all start to come together. And they did sort of improve when it mattered last season. And as you say, Albioni's a good player. I like Brennan Johnson too. Morgan Gibbs-White obviously had a successful year, and I think he's going to be better this year. So yeah, no, I think they'll be Nottingham Forest will be fine too. What do you think about Bournemouth? Obviously, we said about Gary O'Neill. I think put it like this: it's very easily to let sentiment get to you, and you keep somebody like O'Neill, and then yes, it worked for that season, but then the next season it turns out to be a bit of a disaster. I think now they've probably got into their natural progression, and quite rightly, they've gone out and got a manager who they want. I think potentially it'll be incredibly different. I think they're going to be a little bit more open. I think it's Iraola. I can't exactly remember how you say his name, but Iraola.
Is it Adoni Iraola? It's just the one who used to play for like Real Madrid or something. He's got a bit of a pedigree about him, isn't he? I'm pretty certain this is the guy. But anyway, I think
well, he played for Bilbao. He played for Bilbao up until 2015.
I remember him being somewhere from Spain. I remember some sort of traditional club. So Bilbao, fine. I'm happy with that. But some very good, there are 2 really good signings for me. One who's never really hit the heights, but Justin Kluivert, that's a great signing and a permanent deal at that. And obviously, Hamed Junior Traore as well from Sassuolo. 25 million plus there, some two really good signings for me. Changes the dynamics of how they really play. I think Kluivert is a traditional out and out winger, isn't he? Really, Go on.
I think Bournemouth will be fine. I think potentially they might have a few more sort of high scoring games and they'll be a bit more open. But I think in general they've got enough quality in the side. Obviously, a very good season last season, all things considered. Philip Billing's a very good player. I think Solanke has, he performed well last season too. Adding in, as you say, Justin Cliver, who has always had a lot of potential around him, hasn't potentially lived up to it, but potentially in a team like Bournemouth, he could start to prove his worth. I think Bournemouth will be fine. So yeah, I mean, there should be enough there. Apart from that, though, I mean, we're close to covering a lot of those teams. Obviously, we still haven't really spoke about Brentford, Fulham, Palace, but by and large, they should be fine. I think they'll be floating in and around mid-table again, like they were. I think as we sort of said, the likes of Chelsea, and Liverpool and Villa and Brighton, they'll all sort of probably push them a bit further down again. But yeah, I think by and large they should be fine.
Yeah, when I done this and I was looking at the top fours and top sixes, top eights and stuff, Palace, Brentford, etc., they didn't really fit into that team. I think Brentford could be a bit of a one to watch. I think they'll get there. I don't think they'll have such a great start to the season. I think looking at Thomas Frank might be seeing how Brentford, if they stick to their guns and keep hold of Thomas Frank, because you've got to remember they're going into a season where they're not going to have Ivan Toney till around about December time, so there's a lot of their goals has gone, and obviously they're losing David Raya. So that could be one to watch to see if they don't have such a great start to the season, and then obviously you've got, will they keep him? Will they won't? I think they will keep to their guns because obviously he's probably earned the right to keep his job, sort of thing. But yeah, that would be one just to watch out for. I don't think there's any chance of them getting relegated because I think obviously once Tony's back, I think he'll then start becoming the bagsman again. And I think they'll be fine. It's just how they start off about him being in the side. They have obviously, rightly so, they haven't gone out and replaced him.
Yeah. Well, they do have Johan Visa there, though. He scored 7 goals in the league last season, and when he ended up playing, he did manage to get a couple of goals towards the tail end. So I think in general, they'd probably be fine for the most part. I think he's probably shown enough to do a good enough job to fill in at the start. And of course, they've got Brian Mbeumo as well, who's been very consistent over the last few seasons and been very influential in that attack. But yeah, in general, I think they will be fine. Again, they may be some rough patches for them, but I think they've got enough quality in there. And Thomas Frank is an excellent manager, so I don't think they're sort of in danger of that relegation either.
Okay, right. Well, let's quickly just round it off then. We're just going to quickly look at the top 4. We'll just quickly name our top 4. Let's go for the top 6, and let's go for the bottom 3 from each of us. Just do a prediction, and then what we'll do is we'll come the end of this August, because that's the way I like to think. I think it's usually really too early to start saying what's going on with what's going on with teams and stuff, because I think it's particularly that the Saudi transfer window doesn't end until about a month after the English ones. So that could be a big one for me. So yeah, let's have a look at it. Let's have a look at your top 4 in order, and then we'll go for the other. We'll put the other 2 in your top 6. So yeah, let's do the top 6. Bloody hell, come on, Carl. Top 6.
Well, obviously Arsenal are going to be champions. Man City will finish second. United third, and then we'll stick with Newcastle 4th. Liverpool 5th, Villa 6th, but I think those last 3 could be very interchangeable. And then obviously, I mean, I'm saying Arsenal going to be champions, but I mean, that's just me being hopeful and playing my role as the deluded gunner, I guess. I've got to back the boys, haven't I? I've got to back the boys. That's what I'm saying. I'm an Arsenal fan. I'm expecting that progression. Why would I not back the boys and say we're going to do it?
Well, I'm back on the boys because I think that we are just like we'll win that trophy with the best of the rest. So I'm going Man City to win the league because I think it's just big. We are going to become like the Bundesliga, where you just have the same team who win the champions, be champions every year, with the odd occasion of one slipping in there. So I'm going to go Man City, Manchester United, Newcastle, Arsenal, and then I'm going to go Villa, Liverpool. That's my top six, and I think Villa will push that top. I think you'll find that Villa, Arsenal, Newcastle thing will be a bit. I think Manchester United. I think that whole that four will be very, very close and interchangeable because I don't think Manchester United are going to challenge. I think they'll finish second, but I don't think they'll challenge. I think they'll blow it away. City will blow it away. They've got too much for everyone. For me, so I'll start off with my relegation candidates. For me, it's obvious. I don't know which way it'll go, but I just think these three will be relegated. Potentially in this order, I think that you'll have Luton, Wolves, and then Sheffield United. They're my three teams to be relegated.
Yeah, I can't. I would be very surprised if it wasn't that three. Yeah, there's not too much. I think Burnley will probably be fine. Everton.
Yeah.
Everton should be fine as well. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's not hard. I think they're the three clear weaker sides, but I think you really are starting to see sort of quite a big gap developing between sort of the top half and the lower half now. You know, the sort of top 10, if you like, top 8, top 10 are sort of miles above the rest of the league, and you know, although you might get sort of your Fulhams and Brentford's trying to push that, I think that gap is starting to widen. You know, Chelsea will come back. But it's the sort of top half is so competitive, and yeah, it'll just be sort of a scrap down at the bottom. If one of those three teams could make a surprise, then that would make it interesting. But yeah, it'd be quite unlikely at this stage.
Okay, well, I'll just challenge in there and whereabouts. I think they'll be there or thereabouts. I think the teams who we've got to look out for, we could potentially slip into that jeopardy. I've put Forest, Everton, and Fulham, who are my three teams to potentially get in that mix of the relegation thing. But I think Fulham are the ones who will be the furthest away from that, and then six with Everton and Forest potentially being there or thereabouts. But I think both teams are extremely lucky that we have these three absolutely abysmal sides this year in the league. That's my honest opinion on that one. So, anyway.
Just wait until Luton or Sheffield United finish like 12th now.
Yeah, but I'm also queued up for the Wolves 1-0 win at Old Trafford on the opening day of the season, or the opening Monday night of the season. So, which leads us nicely into this week's recording of the podcast, which we will be back on Sunday. Regardless that, you know, I'm going to the United game on the Monday night, so we won't be having a focus on the Manchester United game because we want to have a look at the weekend's fixtures and bring you our thoughts on the opening weekend, and we can obviously cover my prediction for the Manchester United game the next day. So we'll be bringing that to you on the Monday morning, so you can listen to what we've got to say about the weekend's fixtures and what's coming up for Manchester United. Do you want to give a predictions for your weekend for your team and my team? Shall we just quickly give a little prediction? Yeah. Arsenal at home to Forest. Why not? Because we support them. What's your prediction? Arsenal, Forest.
3-0 Arsenal.
Yeah, I think probably about 4-1, 4-0, 4-1, something like that. 4-1. I'll stick with that guy on the line. Brennan Johnson to get a goal for Forest. There you go, 4-1. Obviously, moving on to the Manchester United Wolves game, I think we're probably looking at a nice 1-0 win for Wolves. Because of my prediction that they're going to be so shite that they'll probably turn up at Old Trafford and win 1-0. And Andre Onana's going to be lobbed the halfway line again. So...
No. United are winning that like 4-0. Yeah. 4-5-0 it'll be.
I'll go for a 3-0. 3-0 opening day win for Manchester United. So Arsenal and Manchester United top of the league, and that's not where they're staying. Anyway, been a good little chat. You are, yeah. Oh, bloody hell! You never learn, do you? You never learn. Anyway, great chat as always. Nice to hear your thoughts and opinions on the league coming up. Just a quick reminder of where we are. We're obviously everywhere at the minute, aren't we, Ash? We're all over the YouTube. We've got YouTube Shorts, we've got the TikToks, we've got the Facebook, we've got the Instagram. We're trying to be active on as much platforms as possible. the YouTube videos are coming along. If we can sort out our internet connections and it looks okay, eventually we'll get there, where we can bring you a good standard on the YouTube. But yeah, like, leave comments on stuff, you know, share it with your friends, leave them ratings on Spotify, Amazon Music, etc., or Apple Podcasts. Sorry, leave all your views, opinions, whatever. Retweet us, do whatever you can, share it, get it out there. It's nice to hear from you, and yeah, that's all I can say really. But until Sunday, which will be recorded Sunday for you Monday, goodbye for me, and goodbye
We'll
for
see you
him, I
later.
suppose. Yeah, till Sunday.
Cheers.
Cheers.